Looking ahead then, if you had to make one prediction for the next 5 to 10 years within payments, what do you think is going to change? What do you think will happen?
Wow. Let's do two things. Maybe I'll give you two, and then let's see, because it will be really fun to see where it tilted. There can only be two ways.
And welcome to the 7th season of In Check with Fintech by PCN. This season, we're thrilled to bring you exclusive insights from some of the most influential leaders in the fintech world. Get ready for candid conversations as they share their personal journeys from career-defining highs to the toughest challenges they faced. Buckle up and stay tuned for an exciting season ahead. In this episode of In Check with Fintech, we're continuing our conversation with Pirkner, CEO of Bluecode. This time, we're diving deeper into his gripping insights on the innovation and strategy shaping Bluecode's approach to payments. Bluecode is tackling one of Europe's biggest payment challenges, enabling seamless cross-border transactions without starting from scratch. We'll also discuss the major announcement Bluecode released last week, a game-changing update that could redefine how payments work across borders. Trust me, you won't want to miss this one. Let's get started.
What you're trying to build is an interoperable payment scheme.
Bluecode, and let's go dreamland.
Yes.
Bluecode is a payment scheme. We're live in Austria and Germany, and we have over the last 3-4 years with partners in Europe developed the concept of payment roaming.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's get to that topic. Payment roaming is analogy. Is very. We all know how SIM card roaming works in the telco space. So you have a contract with a carrier in your homeland, and you can fly to another country. You get a push message saying, welcome to, let's say, Telefónica España.
Yeah.
And now you can do a phone call, send an SMS, or do data based on your local contract you have with your own SIM card provider, but you're doing it in a different network. And so our vision several years ago was to say, let's do the same thing for payments. Because in Europe, we have 11 networks. We have Swish in Sweden, we have Vipps in Norway, we have Blick in Poland, we have Bizum in Spain, we have Twint in Switzerland. The list goes on. There's 11 local networks in Europe. And so if we get together, and we did so, we call the association that we built EMPSA, the European Mobile Payment Systems Association.
Yeah.
If we open each other's networks, we might get a way to pay European end-to-end by a user from Scheme A paying into the network of Scheme B. And so, yes, the dream now is to say, Bluecode is one of the founding members of EMPSA. I'm very humbled to be chairman of the association. So our dream is to say, let's build European payment solutions that can tap and scan around the world, because we're partnering in Europe and beyond Europe with all networks that are willing to cooperate to build better ways to pay.
Mm-hmm.
And in Bluecode's case, we have done now these roaming contracts with our friends in Italy, with Bancomat.
Yeah.
We've also done a roaming agreement with our friends in Asia from Alipay Plus.
Big, yeah.
And we will now we became member of the Discover Global Network, which is a network of 25 card networks in India, in Brazil, in Turkey, and in the United States. And so the goal now is to say, wherever you travel as a European, with your European checking account, by your European bank, you shall be having a better payment moment because you either tap or scan, or you are scanned at the merchant, and it will give you more advantages than the previous solutions. And hopefully, and that's the math, it shall work in more places than any other payment scheme on its own, because we're harnessing the power of, in this case, it's 50 networks and all their acceptance points.
And you're not reliant on a terminal.
You're not reliant on the terminal if you want to scan or be scanned. And if the only option is the terminal, then that's fine too. But then hopefully there's a local network giving you access.
Yeah.
It's the ELO network in Brazil, or Rouppe in India, or Troy in Turkey, or the Discover network in the United States, or the Diners Club network. So given the roaming agreements in place, there will be, the math would say in 160 million merchants, there will be a way to pay European by leveraging the networks of all these domestic grids.
And my understanding is the EMPSA network is basically the platform that all these mobile payment schemes connect to and basically provide that interoperability. Is that right?
Yep. EMSA, when we got together, we were 7 in the beginning. Now we're 11. We analyzed, and back then I was a chairman more of the technical working group. Mm-hmm. We analyzed all the API calls of these domestic systems. How does the money move?
Yeah.
Right? Some are dual message, some are single message. So there's a lot of differences, but lots of commonalities. We analyzed legally what's happening. So you basically go through the local networks, and then you come up with a technical and legal and commercial framework to cooperate. How can, when I take my Bluecode capable app, when I scan a QR code in Italy, how should this work? So when you scan that foreign code, our Bluecode system will say, this is not mine. This QR code that I'm scanning at this merchant has not been issued by my network. Mm-hmm. And there we created a platform with APIs to send that QR code into what we call the roaming bridge. The roaming bridge will analyze the QR code structure and will identify where it comes from. So in this case, it's an Italian QR code, as an example, from Bancomat. So the bridge sends the transaction to the Italian system and asks for more info. And that's the fun part, now nothing changes for the local system. The local system treats that transaction as if a fellow Italian had paid. So it goes to the acquirer, gets the MCC code, the amount, the data, the date and time, and sends that back through the bridge. And the payer also had no idea that this was a different code from a different system, because frankly, as a user, I don't care. I want to scan any QR code in the world. I want to see the merchant name and the amount, and I want to press OK.
Yeah.
And that's, at EMSA, we designed the APIs for that, a legal framework for that. And yes, this is the backbone of the idea now with regards to payment roaming, at least for us European.
If you go back to that, because you're founding member of the EMPSA, what was the appetite like from the other mobile payment schemes? Because the vision sounds amazing, right? But that doesn't mean that people will buy into it. What were kind of the setbacks you had to overcome, or the challenges you faced with regards to getting these other mobile payment schemes on board?
I think the key, if you look at from their eyes, take a Bizum. 20 plus million Spaniards use Bizum. Take the Swishes of the world. I hate to now not mention everyone, because all of them are really amazing success stories on their own. If you have a solution like a Swish, Vips, or MobilePay that is used by 90+% of the population, that's really rare in Europe.
Yeah.
Right? In Europe, we lost music, we lost video, we lost social media, we're going to lose AI, messaging we lost. There's any digital disruption, we don't play a role. So these 11 have somehow proved that in the lives of their local citizens, their brand is, even, let's say Sweden, Swish has a brand, the brand is more loved than IKEA, which is a great brand of its own, right?
Yeah.
So getting together, saying each one, of course, has a huge ambitions to keep on winning locally, to make the lives of merchants and users in their respective countries even better. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, if there was one challenge, it was not the vision to collaborate. It was not the ambition that a Swish or a Bizum or a Blick works all around Europe or the world. That's not hard, because we all want our solutions to be more global. The hard part is the prioritization. Usually, to go abroad is between 1% and 6-7% of traffic for a local scheme.
Yeah.
So how much effort and how much resources can you put on becoming interoperable, when at the same time there's still so much to solve back home? And so that's why we at Bluecode, of course, have that ambition. So we were able, and really happy that the others allowed to take one of the leading roles in this, to try to pull through the legal challenges, commercial and technical challenges. But it needed every single one. We had the CTOs of all these systems to share their wisdom. And so I think the main challenge only is making this a priority, not so much the dream.
No, exactly. Yeah. All right. Okay. And then there's indeed the technical capabilities or the technical challenges, I guess, you need to overcome, as you said.
That's right. But technology in the end, if you put smart people in a room, these things are all solvable. So technology usually is the most fun part because it's quite a logical playground. And if you have smart people, then usually technology is one of the fastest.
Yeah.
The more tricky one is the legal front, because what's happening here is user of rulebook A pays into the merchant that follows rulebook B.
Yeah.
So legally, you really have to study both rulebooks to see what rights and obligations fit and what actually clash. And if so, what do you do if now the third one joins and the fourth one joins? How is this possible? And so that was probably more where you have bright legal minds in our teams and externals to really figure out what a roaming agreement in payment can look like. And then, of course, commercial, that's where Europe has its specialty again. I can talk much about Europe versus the US. But in Europe, of course, you cannot, and we cannot at EMSA, discuss pricing or collude on pricing or collude on geographies, rightfully so. There's an anti-competition lawyer in every meeting, so we make sure we adhere to what the European Union is good for, namely, let's make sure there's no collusion happening. But of course, to build a roaming framework, if you can't talk about business models and pricing is quite tricky. But we found actually a good way to do this in that there is some defaults, but every country and every scheme can veer away from that and create their own roaming pricing between the two. And it's not that we set any rates or any prices ourselves.
Sounds a pretty tough challenge, to be honest, to set this up. I guess
I won't deny it's pretty lunatic. Here comes the next Mission Impossible, right? So yes, after trying to build a scheme, building a roaming grid, these are not walks in the park, but that's what makes them fun,
True,
right?
yeah.
If it was easy, then...
Is it slower moving than you expected?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Would you want it to have been further than you are?
It has gone much faster. So we've been done with the solution, I don't know, several years ago already. Yes. And that may be to Europe. Again, I grew up in Europe. I grew up in Vienna. I studied in Switzerland. So I'm European at heart. I then moved to New York to study finance, and I did a PhD in finance and then moved to San Francisco. So the second half of my life, I lived in the States. And now I'm back in Europe. So I have the luxury of actually comparing notes of how things work in school, at university, and now in real life. And I am amazed how Europe does things, and not in a good way. There is extremely talented people. There is solid education. There is so much that speaks for Europe. But there is unfortunately many things that when you want to build something digital on a European scale, many things that are very, very hindering. And so question, can we all as Europeans pull it off? Can we take that use case of payment and actually create a European way to pay? That is still in the stars, to be honest, because it requires quite a bit in terms of leadership, drive, making decisions, go lives to make it reality. And so let's see how the chips fall, but I have to be hopeful that we can pull this off.
And excited by the sounds of it, which is great. And I think an important component is obviously consumer side. Let's talk about it in a little bit. Maybe if you zoom out, are there certain payment schemes that you look up to where you feel there are similarities, like Pix in Brazil, for example, UPI in India? Are those schemes where you look at and you think we can learn from them, or is that what you're trying to build? Or how do you look at kind of today's payment market in that sense?
Right. I think any successful scheme that has pulled off the network effect, so the real exponential traction of people and merchants using it. And so basically, if you win the heart and soul and mind of your audience, that is amazing to watch. And so therefore the answer, unfortunately, is too frequent. So the MasterCard and Visa are absolutely stunning companies. I mean, you have to admire to stay on top of this game for decades. Both of them roughly 500 billion in market cap, really good margins, but they don't rest. So they have brilliant people, they innovate, they create a secure way to tap this card in a soup stand in Indonesia as well as a surf shop in Costa Rica. I mean, hats off, right? But then you have these local champions that we mentioned. I mean, that in Sweden, in Poland, all my EMSA colleagues I admire in great length because they also had to create their own Mission Impossible to build a local scheme that pulls. Maybe two more. Amex. I mean, how amazing is this? To over years create a premium brand as a three-party model with more control over the experience and the pricing. Well done, right? And then, Alipay Plus. Let's go to my network partners. Alipay, of course, a huge success story as WeChat. But what I love about Alipay was this move to create Alipay Plus. We all know Alipay is based in China, is the local system there. Alipay Plus is based in Singapore and is a collection of a dozen or more super apps all around Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
So you have Kakao Pay and you have Gcash and PayPay in Japan. And so they got together to create a more international grid. And all that with 1.5 billion users and 90 million merchants. So you couldn't argue that they were starting from scratch. They had to create this more international idea while all these super apps are racing their own domestic race.
Yeah.
Very, very impressive. And then, of course, our other friends at Discover Global Networks, which is a brand that in Europe we know probably the least. Discover being a bank, Diners being the first card scheme that originated it all, right?
Oh, was it the first one? I didn't know that. All right.
And at least back in the days, it was the brand. And so Discover Global Networks, thanks to a brilliant woman named Diane Offerise, has built a network of local card networks. And that's a very, very amazing idea. So if you are a country and you need your own card scheme, you can go to Discover. You can license whatever you need. The rule book, the technology, the brand guidelines, the marketing success stories, and then create your own card scheme. The only thing you're doing then is you're joining a system of all the others. So you make sure that whoever comes traveling from the other partners can pay in your country.
Mm-hmm.
And so they created probably now the fastest growing card network with DGN, Discover Global Network. And that's also a very impressive story. So sorry for that long-winded answer. I look up to literally all who build a multi-stakeholder payment grid that captures the hearts and minds of their users and merchants. It's very rare. It's about, 50 of them are brilliant companies to follow and learn from.
I love how you slipped in that Discover network and how that is now a new partner of you guys. But that's huge, no?
For us, I mean, we're very humbled, really. We're at Bluecode. Yes, we are a scheme here in Europe, in the DACH region. But to be able to have roaming agreements with, on one side, Alipay Plus, I mentioned, we are now Alipay Plus partner in the roaming grid. So we can leverage their 90 million merchant network. Mm-hmm. And now, newly, that's right, super happy to be partner in the Discover Global Network, this collection of 25 NFC, basically card networks. So yes, now we at Bluecode can tap and scan in the combined network. And in total, if math serves me right, is the biggest acceptance network in the world. And that is super humbling because it's not due to Bluecode's efforts alone. It's due to the idea of payment roaming and the ability to basically open each other's grids and create the better moment.
It sounds like with a Discover, maybe also with an Alipay, it was very much a conversation of equals. So when you knocked on the door, it was very much like, okay, well, this is what we have been building or what we've been trying to build. So yes, let's have a discussion. Or was it you had to go through rejection to actually get them around the table? Or what was that like?
Since we at Bluecode, through our bridge, are connecting to Alipay and we connect to Discover, we are happily leveraging both their grids. So it's not that they are connected. It's we connect into one and then the other network. But amazing was, and maybe that comes back to the European story. I've in my previous life dealt with Asian companies and with Americans, and it felt very much at home. When we talked to Alipay Plus and we flew there, you have very bright people on the other end, very driven people who want to, change the world where they're at, right? Very brilliant engineers, sharp lawyers. And so very quickly, you get on the same page to say, what needs to happen for us to collaborate? Same thing happened in the United States. So when you fly to Chicago and when you meet the people, also the ones they have in the UK, brilliant, visionary, smart, driven. And so these roaming agreements were actually quite straightforward because there was a meeting of minds that it's something where we all win.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, I could argue that becoming a global grid was almost easier than becoming a local or pan-European grid. But still, I mean, in the end, both are now attached to the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
So anyone who wants to join, so any European player, can also attach to that same framework. And then technology-wise, it's all set up. And the legal framework is a multi-party framework. So anyone who wants to join the grid can attach to the middle and benefit from all these roaming connections. Of course, everyone needs to agree with the other one if they want to play with each other. But I think we're in a good state where this should scale pretty nicely for everyone who wants to, who has the same ambition.
If we talk about the kind of current payment landscape in Europe and current payment trends, I think we have to talk about Vero by EPI.
Yes. Uh-huh.
How do you view them in relation to what you're trying to do with Bluecode?
Vero is basically another account-based scheme, right? We have the 11 in the EMSA framework, and Vero is, of course, driven by Germany and France. Both countries did have projects, but at least at Vero's founding, they didn't really have network effects, huge success stories just yet. And so what happened then was, and it makes total sense to do it again, I guess, to build Vero. And Martina Weimert is extremely bright, hardworking, and she, not an easy job. She now has to pull off Vero as a collection of German, French, Dutch, and Belgian banks. I hope and believe that the shareholders are motivated to, this time around, really make this work. So they started with peer-to-peer now. There's an ambition to go e-commerce, I think, next year, and then point of sale thereafter. Mm-hmm. So yes, in some way, you wonder why build this again. This has built so many times already. And several of the EMSA members even have white label solutions to go live next day. But you could always argue, and that clearly is Vero's case, to build it better, or to have more use cases, or to then have control over the platform. So I guess all great. Let's go. We hope and wish that it progresses well and is successful. And that I even can say officially, because of the EMSA chairmanship, the hands and hearts and minds of EMSA are very open to Vero. So if Vero wanted to also come to a roaming agreement to pay into our networks, it might go much faster for Vero even to become a success, because then Vero could pay in the Italies and the Spains and the Portugals of the world, and the other way around. And that's in general one of the key things here. So far, we Europeans are rounding errors. Mm-hmm. We're not relevant on a global stage whatsoever in almost anything digital. We're great to come for tourists to spend our money. We're now in Vienna. It's great to see the opera, to eat what's called a Käsekreiner, to drive in the Fiat with the horses. But it's not that we could in any way claim that we have any digital success or competence. And so therefore, if we think about this in a European scale, we in Europe should not be competing or fighting each other, because then the rest is history. Yeah. We should be looking who does what best, and let's collaborate. We are a collection of peoples in Europe. We speak still different languages, and that's good. We have different traditions. The Swiss park their car different than the Swedes. You tip your waiter different in Spain than you do in Poland. So there is differences, and oftentimes, and that amazes me, this is meant to be a disadvantage, and often meant to be that this is the hurdle and this is the reason why we can't pull stuff off. I happen to believe the complete opposite. The fact that we are a bit more local, nuanced, and complex is the only chance to win against global players. Because Twint, for the last 5 to 10 years, was able to focus on making the Swiss life better. So when you pay with Twint in a parking situation and you leave early, you actually get your money back. And since parking is so darn expensive in Switzerland, this is a great little benefit versus paying with cash or with the card. if you go, and I can tell literally 2, 3, 4 dozen features that my local EMSA colleagues have done better than the existing alternatives by just listening to the local nuance of the use case. And so in my view, the differences are the only chance we have in Europe to actually create a success story in actually solving the problem better than someone sitting far away and who can't really care too much about a use case for, let's say, 8 million Swedes. Mm-hmm. The Swedes can, and they did, and that's why they are successful. So in my view, let's harness the difference. Let's make this our best chance to win by just collaborating amongst each other, opening our networks to each other, and creating the better moment. Especially also in sending each other traffic. If you look at the Asians, Alipay, WeChat, you learn so much. They make a good portion of their revenue by doing lifestyle use cases and also by having rebates and promotions when an Indonesian travels to South Korea. And why can't we in Europe, when a Swiss user comes to Vienna, I'm super equipped here in Vienna to help the Swede go to the best restaurants, get to the best museum spots, get to the best cultural events. By collaborating and using our local specialties, we can build way better products than a global product ever could. And that's why I think the European idea can, should, and must work, because frankly, it's one of the last industries we can hope to make a dent, because many others we lost.
I love the perspective. Basically, by having people with an ear to the ground who fully specialize on that market, you can actually make a difference. Whereas the global players will probably focus on or the global payment trends or the global challenges rather than being super local, exactly, like you have now with those payment schemes. So it sounds like you got the acceptance side sorted, right? I think you mentioned in our pre-chat that you now have more acceptance points than Visa, MasterCard with Discover Network joining.
With Discover Network and Alipay Plus and our Italian friends, yes, the ones even that are live. By the sheer numbers, I mean, there's nothing crazy, but by the sheer summing them up, yes, this should be the biggest acceptance network in the world.
So now the challenge comes to go to consumer side.
Exactly right. Now somebody needs to know about it.
Yeah.
Right?
When I come here, flew in this morning Vienna airport, walked to the city, it's not blatantly obvious to me that I can use Bluecode to pay.
Exactly. Right. And that's why now the big mission after building the grid, the acceptance grid, will be to build the audience.
Yeah.
Right. And so the way, of course, we hope that this could happen is by embedding the Bluecode technology stack into any banking app in Europe. Mm-hmm. So it could be the challenger banks, the Revoluts of the world, the N26s, the Lydias of the world, the banks. I mean, there's many great leading European challenger wallets. By embedding that stack, those apps could now, with a double click, be the payment place.
Yeah.
So you would be able to get a soup in Indonesia on the stand by scanning the QR code. You can tap in Costa Rica. You can do whatever in 160 million merchants in paying straight from the checking account with European rules and rails. So that would be one avenue, is the challenger banks, but any traditional bank as well. You sign a 3-page issuing agreement, you embed the stack, and off you go. So that's the next mission, and let's see where that goes.
Is there a lot of appetite for that?
We shall see. I mean, so far we're now happily announcing the acceptance network so that we managed to get a global grid off the ground. And now the discussions are ongoing with banks, with other schemes, as you mentioned, to deepen the grid even more, to enable others to leverage what we've built. And so in our next podcast in a year or 2 or 3, let's see where that goes.
With your knowledge of payments, of mobile payments, of you having come into the industry fairly new 4 years ago, having a totally different background, what would your advice be for anyone who wants to get into payments, whether that's someone who has just graduated or someone who wants to change industries? What would be your main advice?
Payment is such a fascinating industry, literally, again, because of this complexity on all these layers. So depending, first of all, getting into the industry, I think, is smart because this industry is here to stay. Again, it's the backbone of how we live on this planet. Now we need to keep exchanging money for goods and services. So solid career choice is step one. But then I think very soon you'll have to figure out where your passion lies. Is your passion a lot in really technically understanding how this works? So is that where you thrive, right? And even as a sales guy, I mean, there is very great technically savvy salespeople in this space who make a huge difference because you can put them into deals where things are not yet fully figured out technically. So highly deals with high integration efforts, etc. So if you have this knack of being in the selling position, but you love to really understand how the bits and bytes move, then choose that path. Some folks are really, really eager and love this whole legal regulatory compliance work, where they actually enjoy reading what the PSD3 with the PSR will bring and what the European Payment Council, etc. So that's also what payment is really amazing at, because it's constantly evolving. In many ways, oftentimes it's hugely absurd. So you have to live with sometimes European frameworks where you know this cannot be serious. This has not been done by anyone who's ever really built a product. So you have to love then weaving through this madness. And so if you're that kind of person, there's great jobs in the industry too. And I guess ops the same. I mean, money is moving. This is real money from somebody who's worked hard going to someone else. So if you love being true excellence in operating these products, then you won't find a more critical job anywhere, because where do you happen to move money in real time? So I think the industry is great. So if you're brand new to this, like anything in life, you need to be really passionate about something to make sure this never becomes a job. At least that's how I view life, right? If you live life having one job after the other, something went wrong. You have to, at least that's my view, you have to be able to, otherwise it's non-bearable. You have to find stuff where you're truly in flow state, at least a good portion of the day, where you forget time and space and you actually love doing what you do. And then payment has many opportunities. So if you're brand new, find your flow, find your passion, and then this space is giving you a great life.
So I'm listening to this podcast. Maybe I'm the host of this podcast myself, and I think I'm sold on this vision. I'm going to apply it tomorrow to Bluecode. What do you look for? So I'm going to have a conversation with you, an interview with you. What do you look for in someone when someone wants to join Bluecode? What makes you say, yes, this could be a Bluecoder, or however you call it?
Yes. I guess we do have, of course, some open positions, but oftentimes, even when the candidate didn't really fully fit this position, as I said before, it's all about the human, the person, the people, because we will find there's enough to solve here. This thing is by far not done. So if the profile fits somewhat the mission we're on, and we feel we need more bench to actually tackle this, there's a few elements in the company where it's very reliant on one or two people, and they wish they had one more or two more in their team. So given the candidates, we're quite open there. It goes very fast to actually figure out if, maybe it wasn't an open slot right now, or it doesn't fit perfectly. But if we rearrange in a certain way, there's room for this talent because it really fits well. I think it's harder to find people who love doing these missions versus finding the right position. The position is not the key thing. The person is the important stuff.
So is that the genuine interest in the mission?
Absolutely, yeah. Because that's the only way how you go the extra mile, if you actually feel that this is worth doing.
True, yeah. Looking ahead then, if you had to make one prediction for the next 5 to 10 years within payments, what do you think is going to change? What do you think will happen?
Wow.
What do you hope will happen, maybe then? What do you hope will happen that will bring Bluecode success, or what you're trying to do?
Yeah, that's two things. Maybe I'll give you two, and then let's see, because it will be really fun to see where it tilted. There can only be two ways. So one way, and it's a great way how it might end up, is where the true global professionals, and we know the names, where they actually carry this home, where all of us in Europe pay with the traditional great American or Asian parties, and we will all have happy lives, and it will be great. So you will almost not feel payment because it's so in the background, right? Things will be deducted based on just you having a Face ID, etc., or not even acting at all. It will be just so seamless that you won't even notice. And the players that know how to do this will carry this home. That's one prediction, and it's not an unlikely one. There's another prediction where we assemble the best and brightest of here in Europe, and we get to do literally the same thing, namely fully seamless payment that's safe, secure, and values the privacy of the payer. But the value chain, as I said before, stays here. So when money is moving and when fees are made and when commissions are paid, it stays and pays people here. That's the big difference.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's my prediction? There's slightly more that it's option one, and for good reasons, and that's fine. But of course, there's the dream to say, no, in this industry, we can make it option B.
Watch this space.
That's right. And help along if you can.